Welcome to the Madness and Grace podcast, where we explore the connection between mental health and faith. I'm Dr. Matthew Stanford, neuroscientist, author, and mental health advocate.
And I'm Dr. Madeline Stiers, therapist and trauma researcher. We're so glad you're joining us today. Each week, we have authentic conversations about personal stories, we share professional insights, and explore the meaningful ways faith can influence mental well-being.
Whether you're seeking comfort, understanding, or simply a new perspective, we're here to journey with you. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's dive into today's conversation.
Welcome back, listeners, to Madness and Grace. This week, we are going to be talking about support groups, what that looks like in a variety of different contexts, the benefits that people get from joining support groups, the spiritual aspect that can be integrated into these groups, why they can be helpful in addition as supplemental support to treatment, some barriers to getting groups going, and then how to find the right group. What does a support group look like, and what should it be, and what should it not be? So thanks again for joining us this week. I think, Matt, you may disagree with this, but I think support groups can kind of get a bad rap.
I think they've gotten a bad rap. I think probably most people listen to us right now have a bad idea of what a support group is.
A support group is, yeah. And there's different types of support groups. So you've got like a traditional 12-step group. You may not call that a support group, like an AA meeting or a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, but in a sense, it's a peer group, right? And it's for support around some sort of addictive behavior, right? So it is a support group.
Well, I would just say this before you go on. I would say, if you want to define a support group, it is a gathering of a group of people with a shared common experience or concern, and they provide each other encouragement, support, comfort, and advice. That's it. That's the definition.
Ideally, yes. Yeah.
So that can be anything.
It can be anything. But support groups are typically peer-led, right?
Absolutely.
They are.
There's no licensed provider there. There can be.
Right.
But traditionally, they're not.
Typically. And so I think the bad rap that I had kind of started with is because you have a group it's a peer-led group, sometimes they can go off the rails, right? But we'll talk a little bit about what that is. But the benefits of support groups, I think, very much outweigh all of that.
Enormous research literature on the beneficial effects.
Yeah.
Enormous.
It's social support. There's a lot of psychoeducation that happens in support groups. I mean, you can see symptom reduction in people who are attending support groups. It's just the literature out there really does show that support groups help people in a broad way to help manage their substance use, behavioral difficulties, or their mental health.
I mean, you're looking at a no-cost, easily accessed intervention that has been shown for decades to be beneficial to people that are struggling with mental health problems or who care for people that are struggling with mental health problems, for those that need addiction recovery, for those who are caring for those who need addiction recovery, and typically, as you said, led by just a layman. And so it is an incredible kind of untapped resource, because the problem is not a lot of people are actually referred to support groups. They have to kind of find them on their own. And then I think, if I had to guess, because I've heard this a lot and you probably had too, what most people think of when they think of support group is they think a bunch of people with a kind of a shared problem. So maybe they all drink too much, or maybe they have a loved one who has depression or whatever. And those people get together in a room and they gripe. They tell everybody.
I think that has happened. I mean, that's what I hear a lot of people that were saying, have you been to a support group? Our clients, whatnot. They go, no, I don't want to go sit in a room with a bunch of people who are just whining about how bad their life is. And that certainly does happen. I mean, you see groups kind of digress into that. But the reality is that it should be focused on, coping skills,
right,
and educating yourselves in a sense of like how, things can be beneficial and how things can be harmful in life, and motivating each other to really take the actionable steps to feel better and do things to actively work towards improving your mental health. But when it spirals, I mean, you really can see people, they really don't have great experience.
And, when people say, well, I left there feeling better because I know my life isn't as bad as that guy. But the research shows that non-directed vetting, which is just someone just vomiting out all of their emotions and problems and with no goal, it just all comes out. It's not directed in any sense. They just vent. And so the thing is that has been shown to be detrimental to people's mental health. And so if that's what support group experience you've had, or that's what you find yourself in right now, then that's not where you need to be, because that's not good. And you've mentioned you kind of threw in a couple of different phrases there that I wanted to kind of highlight. And that is, there are different components and different focuses of support groups. Like you said, psychoeducation. So you actually learn about the illness, or you learn about the treatments. That's very beneficial. Knowledge always makes things better. Or it may be more supportive in nature, where you learn a coping skill, perhaps. Like, well, what do we do when we get overly stressed out? Maybe you learn as a group, you learn how to do some breathing techniques or something like that. So you're learning some skills. Or it may be kind of more personally supportive, in the sense of someone, you share this, what you're struggling with, and someone says, I've been through that as well, and this is what I tried. Not that that's the right thing necessarily, but this is what I tried, and this is how it came out for me, versus what somebody else might say they had tried. And then you get a sense that you're not alone. There are other people struggling with the same types of problems.
Yeah, the reality is that support groups I guess this is my personal belief on it, should be somewhat structured. There should be a process that you're going through. I mean, if you look at 12 steps, they have books that they use to navigate through those meetings.
There's 12 steps. I mean,
there are 12 steps. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So a support group is not. The research that is done on support groups is on groups who have like a curriculum. There's intentionality behind what is happening within each session. There's, like you were saying, there's psychoeducation. There is skill development, teaching. There's the actual support component of, this, I understand, I've been through that. I'm here supporting you in this difficult time. I mean, all of those things are components of support groups that, when not all there, you can find yourself in groups that look slightly different. So if you've got support groups, which traditionally are peer-led, and then you have therapy groups, which are more process-oriented, right? And so it's led by a licensed therapist
with a particular focus, typically.
With a particular focus, right? And so you're having a conversation that is guided and directed on a topic by a licensed mental health care provider, who will give you licensed advice and guidance and help that person, or the group members, to process through a specific situation in a way that is likely evidence-based. Whereas in a support group, you're going to have a group that's focused on a specific topic, but that's where the structure of having behind a peer-led support group is so important, because you're not relying on one single person. You're relying on the curriculum or the structure behind it to say, okay, now we're going to talk about some education, understanding what mental health is, the cycles that we may go through with our health struggles. Here's some coping skills for it. Now we're going to get to the support part of, like, what people might term like venting, like you were saying, but in a structured way.
You're supposed to be supporting each other. You're not supposed to be fixing everyone's problems. You're supposed to be supporting each other as you walk through these problems. And that's what people, they go a lot of times and they say, well, I need you to tell me
fix my problem.
Fix my problem. And so I literally remember a support group that I led when I was developing some of the support group curriculum that we have here a long time ago. I remember a man coming, this was a family group for people who were supporting a loved one that had mental illness. And, and he sat there and, we went through everything. I thought it was a good evening. And then he told me afterwards, she goes, well, I won't be coming back because no one else in this group has a daughter with my daughter's exact diagnosis, and I need to know what to do with that. And so he wasn't looking for anything we talked about that night, which I thought was incredibly supportive for everyone. He wanted someone to tell him exactly how to fix his daughter with an exact specific diagnosis, and felt that no one else would know anything except someone who just had. And that's pretty specific, and so that's not what you go to a support group for. You go to support group because you need support, and you need support because mental health problems are overwhelming. Whether you have one or you're trying to care for someone with one, they're overwhelming, and you really can't do it on your own. And that's why you go to a support group. And so I think that, it's important that people realize that support groups really are very evidence-based. If you go to a support group and it is just an unstructured, everybody's just talking, the only way that could ever be beneficial is if it was led by a licensed provider, because that licensed provider would have the experience to be able to direct it in certain ways and have kind of maybe an agenda for the evening. But even then, I have a problem with that, okay? Because that then is suggestive of a therapy group. And unless that's all laid out ahead of time, you're coming to this cognitive behavior therapy group and we're doing, and so I think that it's important that you go to when you're kind of evaluating the support groups, talk to the facilitator and say, what are your credentials? How, are you just a peer, a layman with a similar problem? What's the curriculum that's used? How long have you been leading this? What kind of people are in the group? I mean, that's the kind of thing you're looking for. You're looking for support. You're looking for connection. And a lot of times when support groups go well, it really becomes like a small family, of people that can walk along with you, and you're in contact with them outside the group. It goes beyond just sitting around in a room in a circle for an hour. I mean,
Yeah, we run the groups here, between 12 and 16-week cycles. And oftentimes, if those particular individuals don't come back for like a next round, because it's the same content essentially, that group, if they've solidified in a supportive way, they'll go out and go get coffee or go get lunches. And so they kind of take the support aspect and have developed relationships that are meaningful. Because, we know people who are struggling with their mental health, their social component of life can oftentimes be negatively impacted. And we also know research shows that increased social support that is healthy can positively impact our mental health outcomes. Right. So there's this need to really address the social component of a person when we're talking about mental health. And so these support groups not only address the social aspect of it, but when their focus or the content is about mental health, you're going to hit, in a sense, killing two birds with one stone sort of thing. And from the group, you get the education, you get some of the coping skills and development, you're getting some social interaction, and from that can emerge a social community. And it doesn't happen for everyone, but a community of people that are understanding and supportive of you that you may or may not have in your life outside of that. So we're constantly telling people, like, find a support group, go a few times, see how it feels, especially if those people are in our office or calling us and they're like, I don't have any social support. Like I have nobody here in person, or I just have totally, maybe everyone in my family close-knit has died, or we've just disconnected, or we're no longer speaking. Get into a group, get into a support group. I mean, it can transcend just the group aspect of it.
I mean, healing happens in relationships. And that's what support groups are all about, building relationships. So you do have to also understand, when you go to a support group, the very first time you go, it's not all about, fuzzy feelings and, now I'm friends with everybody in here kind of a thing.
Oftentimes it's not.
It takes time, and so you got to kind of hang in there. Go ahead.
They can be unpleasant. That's what I tell people. I go 2 or 3 times, because the first time you go to a group, especially if you've never been to one, you're going to go in and maybe be asked why you're there, and to talk about your struggles with mental health, as a caregiver of someone who's struggling, maybe share a little bit about your story. And these are painful things that you're there to get support from. So you have to go and be open and vulnerable to share some of these painful aspects of your life. And you may not people may not be fawning over you, giving you hugs and patting your back. So when you leave, you might feel raw and exposed, and it's an unpleasant feeling. And as you develop those relationships a bit more and understand the community that you've stepped into, it can be unbelievably supportive.
Right. No, absolutely. And, a majority of support groups in the U.S. meet at churches, and particularly recovery groups. That's a
Yeah.
given. So, your local church may be running, not necessarily your church, just the closest church to you may have support groups right there. There's any number of national organizations that offer support groups, chapters all over the country. You can get online and find that. But, if you are someone involved at a church or a pastor, perhaps, or you make those kind of decisions, it's the simplest thing that a church can do to begin to try to better minister to individuals with mental health problems. And the reason it's so simple is that you actually can offer support groups at your church and never have to train anyone or even find a facilitator. There are lots of support group organizations around the country that if you will just provide them with a space, they will send a facilitator to you to run a support group. And so things like AA is a wonderful example. There's all kinds of organizations,
NAMI is another one.
DBSA, NAMI. I mean, there's all types of organizations for mental health, Al-Anon, that offer support groups for people with mental health problems or addiction, or offer for the caregivers of those individuals. And they'll actually provide the facilitator. You just have to provide the space. And then on the faith aspect, there's all kinds of wonderful faith-based support group materials and curricula that are available. Things like Celebrate Recovery, which is a great one for addiction recovery, grief share, divorce care. There's all types of ones. We here at the Hope and Healing Center, we have our transformed groups. We have a trauma group and a group for families that care for loved ones with mental health problems, and Minds Transform for people who have mental health problems themselves. And I think, what's interesting is that, faith-based groups really not only can they reduce distress or symptoms, but they also can improve spiritual growth in an individual.
Right.
So there's a lot of very simple opportunities. You can get, volunteers in your church trained, and they can lead some of those faith-based groups. Or we offer an online training for our groups, and then you have access to the curricula. We'll make sure that those are available in the notes below. And then, as I said, you can get others that just kind of offer their group right at your church. And I think a variety of groups is really important because it really attracts in people from all over the community that are struggling. And what I tell pastors all the time is if a person goes to a support group at your church and they find that beneficial, whether it's a faith-based support group or not, at some point they're going to go, this must be a safe place for people to come that have mental health problems because I see these other groups here. I'm going to check this place out. I'm going to show up on Sunday and see what this place is all about. So it's a real great kind of outreach to the community to just say, this is a safe place for you to talk about your problems. So I highly encourage it for faith communities. I think it's a really something that's been lacking.
Yeah, even just having a few. I mean, we've got almost 35 that meet here on our
Right.
campus, but just having 2 or 3 can be, or just one can be, it's a way to engage people in a different level in the community. I mean, I think if you're sitting with someone, who's a part of your faith community or just anybody that is needing some support and you're going, I think a support group, would really be helpful. I think some of the things that you'll hear them say if you offer it, if they're willing, great, they're going to say, yes, when, where, what does it look like? I want to go. That's easy, right? You've given them the resource and they're taking you up on it. Oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, I don't really want to go sit with in a room full of strangers and tell my story. Or they'll say, it's not going to be helpful for me. Maybe for other people, but it won't be helpful for me. Or no one's going to understand. Like the example, Matt, that you kind of gave, this person was looking for a very specific type of group, really kind of looking for answers as opposed
Overly
to
specific. Yeah.
right, as opposed to looking for support and community. And those are myths or barriers that you're gonna hear people say. And I go, maybe you won't get anything from the group, but why not try going a few times? It's unlikely that it's going to do damage. You might not like it, but it's unlikely that you're going to walk in and they're going to, pull a shank out on you. I mean, it's just not, it's not what's going to happen. And I mean, research shows even just passive participation. When we have people come to our groups that will just sit and not say a word.
Right. No,
But
absolutely.
they get something from being there.
Absolutely.
So if you're trying to encourage someone, there's some things to think about. If there's giving pushback, say, I understand the hesitancy. Think about it. Like, it can be super helpful. And if you don't like it after 2 or 3 tries, you don't have to keep going. Like, that's
And
the
you also
thing.
can always try another one. I mean, it's just like going to a therapist or anybody. You go to a mechanic and you don't like them, you go try a different one. So it's,
Yeah. And
I think
you're not
those are good.
really wasting any money in this sense, because
Right.
typically free.
Absolutely. And that's really one of the great aspects of it. It's extremely accessible. They're everywhere. And it's free. And one of the things I say to families who have loved ones who really refuse to get care, a lot of times we'll have families contact us and, our loved one has a mental health problem, or we believe they have a mental health problem. They refuse to get any treatment. They don't think they have a problem. What can we do? I always begin that conversation by saying, it's impossible for us to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. And the only way you can force treatment onto somebody is if they're a threat to themselves or others. And that's that's more of a rare instance. And so, but you can, be in control of what you do. And so research has demonstrated, and I tell people this all the time, that if the family members of an individual with mental illness who is not being treated, okay, they'd receive no treatment. If those family members begin to go to a psychoeducational support group, meaning they learn about the illness and they receive support from the group in relationship to caring for someone with an illness, not only does the quality of life of the people that are caring for the person with mental illness improve, but the individual themselves improves, even though they're not receiving any treatment, because it changes the entire family dynamic. And so going to a support group, if you have a problem, is beneficial for you. Going to a support group, if you care for somebody that has a problem, is beneficial for you and the person with the problem.
But when you say care for, you don't mean as necessarily like a caregiver day in, day out. But if you have a loved one.
A loved one or a friend.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Al-Anon's a perfect example. Al-Anon is for people who have a loved one who has or has had an alcohol abuse problem. Okay. Well, you don't necessarily have to be taking care of them. They may live at your house and have an alcohol problem. So, and I say, you're there. You're in relationship to them. Okay. And it's affecting you. This could be beneficial for both of you. So I think that's an important thing to remember. And the other thing is I just highlight what Maddie just said, and that is that, you don't have to, a good support group should not the very first time you get there force you to share your entire story of everything you've ever, that they should have some grace to give you time to work into the group. Now, a lot of people may not know what a support group's like, so I thought I would just kind of just walk through what our support groups are like, our transform groups. They all follow a similar kind of a format, and a lot of support groups are very similar. So ours is a faith-based group. So it's going to start out with the facilitator kind of reading the rules of the group. And like one of the rules, for instance, is we're here to support one another. We're not here to fix one another. So those types of rules, and so, and they're very simple when you read the same rules every time. So everybody kind of knows, where we are, this is the page we're on here. And then, in that group, in our transform groups, we have a time of sharing where people share about how God has been working in their lives. So it's very upbeat. A few people will share. And that's just a few minutes, and then usually kind of have a prayer and jump right in. And so we follow a similar format every night: faith, facts, and future. And so faith is a story from the scriptures that highlights the topic of the night. There's a different topic of each week. Facts are just a list of questions and discussion points for the facilitator to lead the group through as they discuss that topic. A topic might be the use of medication in psychiatry, or for illnesses, or it might be guilt and shame, or whatever, different topics. And then future are kind of practicals that you can take home and immediately put in place that will kind of help your improve your quality of life. And then there's a time of kind of personal ministry with one another. You break off and you kind of pray with one another, and then kind of break off in twos and threes and hear about what's going on, outside the group and things like that. And then the group breaks up, but a lot of times people stay around and they talk because there's a lot of relational aspects to it. Sometimes people bring food, sometimes people don't bring food. It just depends on where it meets, what it's like, who the facilitator is. But over time, it builds itself into a very supportive culture. And you're there for one another even during the week. And so, as Maddie said, a lot of people, particularly people with mental health problems, they have no support. And this is a built-in support system for them to help them recover. But it's also there to support you if you are the loved one or the friend, to help you do a better job of caring for or loving the person that you care for.
It is a bit of a commitment, though.
It is. One time a week, probably.
Yeah. I mean, but making that commitment is, I think if you're enjoying it, it's an easy thing. But when you're scared, wanting someone suggesting you attend,
right,
it feels like a big commitment. We all have busy lives, things going on. And so, yeah, I would just encourage people to take the step, and, you can have a friend go with you. It doesn't have to be,
you can.
And
I think you
alone.
might.
I know we've tried to run the groups here. It doesn't always work, but the family's transformed and the mind's transformed on the same night around the same time. So you can come, and then your loved one who's struggling with their mental health can come, and you can both kind of go into different rooms and have your support, and then go home together.
Right.
It's a good approach.
Yeah, I think that what a lot of times people might say, particularly those that have mental health problems, is they might say, well, look, I already go see a therapist. I don't need to go to a support group. Well, it's not the same as therapy. It's a totally different thing. And so, I tend to think of treatment for a mental health problem as a stool with 4 legs, or a chair. Maybe you might say a chair. So you've got one leg is medication, one leg is support, one leg is lifestyle changes, and one leg is therapy. Okay. And so if you're receiving psychiatric medication and you're receiving therapy, that's great. That's great. But you don't have a full kind of, as long as you have support at home, that might be good enough. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't have a lot of support. It just isn't there. And so a support group can provide that for you. And it's really the same thing as you're trying to care for or love someone that has a mental health problem or an addiction, is that you really need support on how to get through this. It's overwhelming. It's not just overwhelming for you. It's overwhelming for everyone, whether they admit it or not. And so, I think it's just very, very important. So here at the Hope and Healing Center, I love it when I see that our individual therapy clients are in a support group. Sometimes individuals are in more than one support group. Someone might have more than one addictive problem, and they might be in more than one addictive group, or so forth. And so I think that, it is worth checking out. The big problem, and I'd like to get your thought on this too, Maddie, is because I'm really just not sure why it happens so much. But one of the big problems is that you can go through mental health treatment, or you can be the loved one of someone going through mental health treatment, and literally never hear the mental health care provider even mention support groups, like never even mention it, and certainly never give you a referral.
Yeah, I think referrals are, unless you're a case manager in the mental health systems, like providing referrals just doesn't happen. And when you're the case manager, there's so many other things that might take precedence over a support group that they fall to the wayside. Yeah, are they housed?
Right.
Yeah, where are they? What are they going to eat tomorrow? Can they get their medication? Are they about to be hospitalized? Like, what's going on the more acute level than the support groups? Which is a shame, because, like you said, they're so important, and they address that social component in relation to our mental health difficulties. And then the way that we've kind of set up these groups, like you said, incorporates the religious or spiritual component of a person as well. And I know in these groups we talk about physical health, right, and eating well. And so it's a way to kind of address all of the components of a person, that holistic perspective, in a way that may not be as overwhelming. You're not being lectured by your doctor. Well, you just need to change your your eating habits, and you'll be feeling better. It's a way to have these conversations with peers, people who are not your doctor.
Right. And some that have tried things that you're thinking about trying and it didn't go so well, or it went really well. It helps you be a more informed consumer of services as well.
Right.
And there's two other things I'd like to say about support groups that I think are kind of a little bit uh, off of the track a little bit, but that I use a lot. A lot of times, we will have individuals that will come here, or families will bring them here, and they simply are not willing to go to treatment, like therapy, one-on-one individual therapy, or even a group therapy session. But I will encourage them just to go to a support group. Just go to a support group and see what that's like. It's no one's there to do therapy on you. You can be quiet if you want. Just go and listen, just to kind of break the ice of what it's like to start to be in some kind of mental health treatment. So I think that can be at least an on-ramp to treatment. And another thing, sadly, is that a majority of people in the U.S. never receive any treatment that have mental health problems. And one of the primary reasons they don't receive any treatment is because they don't have money. And this stuff is expensive, and insurances oftentimes don't cover it. But support groups rarely ever charge. In fact, I don't think any support group should charge. I mean, a therapy group's a different thing, but
Right.
support groups should be free. And you easily can find a free support group. And I promise you that being actively involved in a well-facilitated support group that is focused around the issue that you're dealing with is going to be tremendously beneficial to you, whether you're getting treatment or not, whether you can afford treatment or not. It may not seem like that, but it really is very, very beneficial.
Another point totally far off from what you just said, but I think we've touched on it a little bit, is you were talking about how in our group we set up these, there's the rules that are kind of established. So if you don't know what a support group is and you go into it and it feels chaotic, it's because it's probably not being managed well.
Right, absolutely.
Someone needs to say, hey, let's set up some rules, some boundaries, understanding of what these sessions or these meetings are going to look like. That actually can help the group become more cohesive as well. Typically what we'll do is we'll say, here's the kind of base group rules, and then so-and-so, would you have anything else you might want to add to these rules? And there was a time where some of the groups would say, we don't want to talk about politics in this group.
Right.
No, because that's not the topic for the group. And if things are high, politically, people don't want to talk about it, or they might, and that's going to overshadow the content of the group. And so letting group members kind of have a say in how the group is being managed. It's their group. Yeah.
And normally you don't talk about politics in groups. And if that just comes up ever once in a while, it's not that big a deal, but it could become a problem. And then, like you said, the group might want to come up with it. So again, you're not just you can be, but you're not just a passive participant when you're part of a support group. You're usually part of the group, and you have input just like everybody else does. But you can be a passive participant, and most people, I would say, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Maddie, most people are passive participants at the beginning. You got the occasional guy who shows up, and the very first time he comes, he's sharing, but most people are a little standoffish when they first start. And that's perfect.
Yeah, the first time we run one of these groups, it's usually you can see everyone's a little nervous. There's this high anxiety, like, who are these people? What am I doing here? What have I gotten myself into?
Right.
And then once we jump in, people go, oh, okay, yeah, this is, other people are here for the same reasons I'm here. And there's no shame in that. And when they come back, and the next week you go back and you go, I know your face because you were here last week. Like, it's more familiar, and it just becomes more and more comfortable. So that's why I tell people when we refer them to support groups, I go, try to go at least 2 or 3 times, because the first time is going to be uncomfortable. It just is. If you've never been to a support group, it's going to be weird.
I think that's another
going
thing.
to your first day of school, you're going to a new classroom with a teacher and all these, and you're like, where do I put my stuff, and where's my seat, and who's this person next to me, kind of thing. It feels a little,
That's
off,
a good example.
so.
I think another thing that I would say, since most people aren't familiar, is what you just said, is that absolutely you have a core. They're going to be the same people every week that come every week. So it's not like you go one week and there are 8 people there, and you go the next week and you're the only person that's the same person there. There's going to be a core group that comes every single week. So you're going to really be able to build up relationships. And it's not just everybody just leaves after one time. So I think that's important too. So there's a consistency, and it's usually more often than not going to be the same leader every week.
Right.
And they might have a co-leader, but I would say if you're looking for a support group, just to kind of reiterate some of the things you just said, it's great to have a support group that has some rules to it, has some structure, maybe follows a curriculum. Certainly, you want to feel safe within a group so you can share. You want some consistent meeting times. You don't want them to just meet, like willy-nilly. And so I think that, you got to find one that you're comfortable with, but please look for one because they are tremendously beneficial. And I really can't stress that enough. And they're easy to find because if you're in any kind of large urban area, they're all over the place. And the other thing is, post-pandemic, there are lots and lots of support groups that are available online. Now, I don't particularly like the online approach because I think it's great to be in person. But, if you're in a rural community or you have some transportation problems or mobility issues, it is a great way to connect. So, for instance, here at the Open Healing Center, we offer an in-person grief group every month. We also offer an online grief group every month. And so there's a lot of opportunities online as well. So thanks for joining us today as we talked about support groups, and I hope that you have the opportunity. If you're looking for support groups and you just don't know where to start, you can always call our Hope Line, or you can call the Hope and Healing Center, and we can help you find some places that you might connect with. So we'll make sure that those links and contact information are in the notes. So please join us again on Madness and Grace, where we discuss mental health and faith, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks for joining our conversation on this episode of the Madness and Grace podcast. If you found value in our discussion today, we'd love it if you'd subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode.
And if you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It helps others find these important conversations.
Sharing this podcast with friends and family members is also a wonderful way to extend hope to those who might be struggling with mental health concerns.
We'll be back next time with another candid conversation about madness and grace. See you then.